This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. I lend my voice to those who can't. It's time we try, it's time we care, it's time we stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome back to the Special Chronicles show. My name is Daniel. I'm the founder of Special Chronicles and a certified international global messenger of Special Olympics and a service ambassador at United Airlines. This is episode 463 of the Special Chronicles show. We're now a few weeks into 2022 by the time you all hear this. And this is a special bonus episode of our Unified at Work series featuring conversations about the meaning of inclusive employment. The Unified at Work series is supported by Bridge, one of United's business resource groups that is connecting people of all abilities. SpecialChronicles.com for links to follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And be sure to subscribe or follow and rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Special Chronicles and you'll find the show. In addition to listening to this audio podcast, we hope that you also subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of new episodes. And you can sign up for our newsletter. Once again, SpecialChronicles.com for links to subscribe and follow our newsletter, follow us on social media, subscribe to this podcast, all that. Our guest this week on the Special Chronicles show and our Unified at Work series is Sandra Kaspar. Sandra is the Director of Sales show at United Airlines and is the Bridge Chapter Chair, which once again, Bridge, for those of you not part of United listening, Bridge is United's business resource group that's connecting with people of all abilities. So please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Sandra to the Special Chronicles show. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for having me. Well, first, I love the applause. Thank you so much.
It's just imagine that we've got we're both in two different locations.
Right.
I'm in this Polaris Club, kind of.
Yes.
So, kind of.
Yes, kind of.
For the audio podcast people, go check out the video on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter Live, and you will see us. But yeah, it's hopefully someday we'll be able to maybe record a show in person, and then we could actually have a live audience.
Oh yes, and then the extra applause. No, I love it. It just brings the mood up already from the beginning of
yeah. So we first met, and I made some notes before we went on air today. We first met as a part of, because we're both part of Bridge, which for our listeners that are not part of United, because we have a lot of listeners that are not employees that are listening. But I'm sure we also have a lot of fellow employees that are listening. But for the listeners that are not employees, Bridge is one of United's business resource groups that's connecting people of all abilities. And we first met, was it a couple
of months ago, maybe.
It was a couple of months ago because we were on a town hall together, but then I think we also met prior to that town hall on a couple Teams meetings, right?
Yes, that's right. And you share the same name as my son, Daniel, so stick to my mind. And which is great. Yeah. And then I know we were part of this town hall, and I have the opportunity to talk about my son and why I'm here for. So thanks for having me, Daniel. Yeah. First of all, maybe I'll tell you what my day job here at United is.
Yeah. Introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little bit about your day job here at United and
my connection here too. I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, and you're connecting to our disability community and well, particularly which is related to Bridge, because Bridge is all about our disability community at United, but then we're also connecting with our customers
Our customers as well. Yeah.
as well.
So I am the director of leisure sales for United. This is my day job. I pretty much work with travel agencies that sell tour packages or cruise lines. And I have been with the company for 23 years, which was pretty much my first job, Daniel. And I always like when I introduce myself, I always tell people that I'm from Brazil. And the reason why I do that is because otherwise people don't pay attention to my message. They're trying to figure out where's this accent from. So I am originally from Brazil. I'm from São Paulo. And I have joined Bridge a couple of months ago, as you mentioned, as I'm the chapter chair there. So we're promoting this BRG to all our employees. First, I believe in inclusion. I am a big inclusion proponent. I was already part of other BRGs before. But there is a special reason why I'm part of Bridge and part of the board on Bridge, which is my son. And my son, his name is Daniel, as I mentioned to you guys. He's 8 years old now, and he's in the autism spectrum. So it has been a journey for me as a mom, of course. And I felt the need of representing him and actually fighting for the rights for people that have some sort of disability or different abilities. And as you mentioned, Daniel, also in the customer side, but also in the employment side.
Yeah.
And that's the reason that I'm here. And I think a personal passion, it's what can move things forward too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into a little bit more about the employment side in the next segment. But talk a little bit more about your son with autism. And I know we talked a couple weeks ago to get ready for this podcast that we're recording right now, and you had said that something about a month to be and how we're all connected. So maybe share a little bit about how you both found out about your son's diagnosis and what you meant by month to be. And
meant to be. I'll do that. That's great. So I think I'll start by saying that throughout my life, I was always attracted. I was always friends with people that had some sort of disability. I had a friend that had Down syndrome. I had a girl that she has some sort of invisible disability too. And it's interesting because in a group of lots of people, I was always the one that ended up being attracted, appear with someone that had some sort of disability. And I enjoyed it, but also at the same time, I didn't know if I was being improper and how to communicate. And so I always had that in the back of my mind. And my son, who is 8 now, always had some milestone delays. And his doctor asked us to evaluate for his development. And he came with the evaluation of ADHD. A couple of years ago, he was 3, and then we made another evaluation when he was 5. And I'll tell you this story because I think it's important, especially as we talk to parents. If parents are part of this podcast or listening to us, and I'm sure they are. I remember I was leaving my office, the office that I am here today at the Willis Tower, and his doctor called and said, I saw the results of your son's of your development report, but I want him to be tested still to see if he's in the autism spectrum. And I remember for me listening the word autism and the name of my son in the same sentence, I kind of stopped. I remember I was leaving the office, and actually sometimes when I walk through that way, I have that feeling. I'm like, okay, it's strange, but all right. So I was at first shocked. And I got the appointment for a year after. And that day when it came, I had a business commitment. A year after because we were waiting, right? I had a business commitment, and then I ended up postponing my son's evaluation. And I do think it was my own fear of finding out if Daniel was in the spectrum.
Yeah.
It was postponed. We did have it again, and it turns out that in May last year, during the pandemic, when his diagnosis came. And I think I was prepared. And I think it was a beautiful thing because I was so worried. I think the autism word carries a lot of stigma and a lot of worries.
Mhm.
And when I learned about it, I was like, wow, actually, it's a good thing. The doctor told me that for a couple of reasons. My son was able to get the therapies that he needs because now we know that he's in the spectrum.
Yeah.
For me as a mom, also it made me understand that some milestones that he wasn't reaching, now he's reaching. And now he's reaching. I mean, okay, he took more time,
Yeah.
but he got there. And also to understand Danny. It's not like I got notice of now he's sick. He's not sick.
Yeah.
It's something that is part of him. So I thought it was a great thing, and that's why I felt like for me today, Daniel being here and talking about autism is important, and what we're doing about that. Um, versus last year, I was completely unprepared, and just for me saying the word Danny has autism, it's so important and empowering for me.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's not ASD because I feel like he has ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder, was a little bit masked, but for me it was a journey from ASD to autism too. So I'm here because of my brilliant 80-year-old son.
Yeah. And I've had a few other people with autism that have been on this podcast before, and a few other people have said that that there's not one diagnosis that's the same. Everyone is different. Like each
True.
each person with autism is different. So, and
True.
it seems like
They
that
do have that. They say,
that
yes, they say when you meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism. That's why it's a spectrum. It can be so
yeah,
unique to
yeah.
each individual, right?
So let's move on and talk to us a little about how you said how we're all connected. And I know at United we talk about a lot about how we're connecting with people and united in the world. And so talk to us a bit about how this mission at United Airlines is connected with your roles at your
yeah,
day job, but then to kind of added maybe a little spin to personal life, how that's connected with your son
okay,
and others with disabilities as well.
great, great. I think the word connecting and connecting people and uniting the world is really a mission. And if I associate that with what we're talking about, I think connections, human connections, are vital for all of us. And one of the things that I've learned, and I want to talk about that too, is the importance of understanding each other and connecting. I think we talk a lot about inclusion, which is important, of course, and we're going to talk about that. But our connecting with peers is something that is extremely relevant. So for someone that is neurodiverse, it's good to know their peers. For a mother of someone that is in the spectrum, is also good for me to know peers. Other parents that also have kids that have an invisible disability, which is the case of my son. Because I think when you connect with others, when you meet your peers, it normalizes it for you. You do
We're going to take
not feel alone. And I think the connecting the sense of traveling to places is important. The human connection is also something very, very key for whatever you're going through. We all need peers to connect with.
awesome. So, and so I don't know if any of listeners caught that. I accidentally clicked a button before we.
Do not worry, Daniel. I tend to talk a lot. I can be talking for hours here. So
It's all good. Just before we that was actually that clip that I was about to play was for our first sponsor break, but we'll take that break in just a moment. But before we get to that, you to maybe share more about your son and you had and I think this was more a few weeks ago when we had met to prepare for our podcast time together right now, but you had said that your son is interested in maps, and you also shared that he's really good at knowing airport codes, and that
Yes.
that he also has an interest in travel.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about some of the
Yes.
interests of your son?
Oh, absolutely, Daniel. So I think at the same time that he has some challenges and difficulties, he has this amazing focus on subjects of interest. And he loves maps. He loves the world map. He knows the capitals of every country in the world. He asked me, "What is DRC, Mom?" Like, I don't know, where is it? And he knows everything. He's also very interested in airport codes, which is convenient, of course. I think maybe there's an influence from me, but he digs into things. So then he's very interested on that. Actually, when we fly, he can have that map on the whole trip and not watch a movie. So this is an area of focus for him. And we have traveled several times, Daniel. Planning a trip can be a bit of a challenge. And for me, I always think trip starts from planning. But then he's excited about that because he's a world traveler. He's a premier silver
Yeah.
because of some of the challenges. I think we may talk about that. But
Yeah. Maybe right before we take our first break, maybe talk just a little bit, and we can talk more about this in the next segment. But since you just mentioned, maybe share briefly a little bit about how your son is a civil status with United, and
yes, I will.
and kind of
No,
how that came to
why?
be.
Why? Right? So
Why with all
my
the
travel benefits? Why is he a silver?
travel benefits and the travel? Yeah.
Yeah. So there's one thing for him that is very important is consistency and knowing what to expect. And although I have the privilege of having flight benefits, standby flight benefits, it's something that wouldn't work for Danny and doesn't work for Danny. So when we travel, we buy tickets for both me and him to assure we're sitting side by side, which is important. And to the point that he's a silver premier with United, he goes and travels. We travel frequently to Brazil and also to visit his dad, who lives in California too, and they fly back and forth. But the flight benefit is something that we end up not using, and then he's a premier because of that. Because the line, the fact that you don't know if you're gonna get a seat assigned, you may need to go back home, or if you get a seat, would you sit close to mom or not? Can be a meltdown for him, and something very difficult for him to deal with. So we luckily decided, we have the means, of course, and he's a premier silver, gets all the perks, has a better benefits than I do.
Awesome, and I'm sure we'll talk about it. What we will talk about in the next segment, but I think what you just shared about how about what you just shared about your son could potentially help other people that your son has, and I know it is. Have you talked with
You froze a bit for me, Daniel. I can't hear. I'm sorry.
Ooh, there. I think. All right.
You're back. You're back.
I'm back. I was just saying. I thought that you sharing your story with your son, I'm sure can benefit others that may either have autism or similar disabilities that your son has. So we'll continue this conversation, but more maybe on the inclusive employment side of things with role models, and talk a little bit about social stories, which is something that you had mentioned. in the pre-show, but we'll talk about that after the break. You're listening to the Special Chronicles show. This is a special bonus episode of our Unified at Work series. This is episode 463. I guess it's Sandra Kaspar from United Airlines. We'll be back. We're going to take a quick break from our conversation today to learn how you can become a Special Chronicles supporter so we can continue to produce this podcast. Support for Special Chronicles comes from listeners like you. As an independent public media podcast, Special Chronicles will always be there for you. Now we're asking you to be there for us. As a nonprofit independent media organization, we can only make programs like Special Chronicles with listener support. Our programs provide weekly, candid, honest, and inspiring conversations about the people with disabilities community that creates awareness, support, and advocacy within each week's episode. Listeners tell us our shows are an enjoyable and necessary podcast for the intellectual and developmental disability community and everyone else who is able to listen to stories about life from a different angle. Please, if you and your family love our weekly podcast, make a one-time, monthly, or annual gift of thanks today. Support this podcast at specialchronicles.com/give. That's specialchronicles.com/give. And now, back to the show to continue the conversation today. And back to the show. Our guest is Sandra Kaspar from United Airlines, and who's the Bridge Chapter Chair for the business resource group that's connecting with people of all abilities. I'm Daniel, founder of Special Chronicles and a service ambassador at United Airlines, and a Silent Striver International and Global Messenger of Special Olympics. So many titles, it's hard to mention in the intro. But once again, specialchronicles.com, if you guys want, I have links. I'll just look in the description below for the show notes, and you can find links to subscribe to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, all those places. But let's continue this conversation. And one of the things that, so as you know, I'm one of the original Special Olympics service ambassadors, or SOSAs, as we say.
Yes, as we call it. Yeah.
As we call it. And which is a new inclusive employment program that we have at United. So we'll employees just like you and everybody else. So it's really nice that we'll inclusively include inclusively,
which is true.
Floyd. And so maybe talk a little bit about kind of when you first found out about our service ambassador program. What was share your reaction to our so ambassador program? Because I when something that you had told me about is that myself and the other Olympic ambassadors, peers, are role models for your son and could
and you are Daniel. So
hopeful.
I think
for
yes,
his future.
I think. Look, I think we talk a lot about role models when we think about the Black community or Latinas like me or women. And we need to talk about role models of people that have some sort of different ability or disabilities. And when I learned about the SOSAs, the Special Olympic Service Ambassadors, like you, and when I met you, I was so grateful for that. I see you as a role model. And it's a role model for my son and others, because he's going to grow one day. He's going to look for a job and independency. And I really think it's important. And maybe we don't have enough. And I applaud United's initiative and Jonas initiative to bring you on board and a team of others. I think we're now 14 and growing.
Yeah.
So I do believe role models are very important, and that gives me hope. One thing that I saw a couple of weeks ago is I was listening to Salma Hayek, the actress,
Yeah.
which is a Latina, a woman, which is something that speaks to me too. She got this job as a hero, this role as a hero at Eternals. And when she saw her face, her Latina face, with a superhero frame and mask, she started to cry because she's never seen a Latina hero. And that meant the world to her. And I see the same, Daniel. I think when we have people that have some challenges that are working, it's awesome.
Yeah.
This is awesome. So I appreciate what you do, and you're really a role model, and you and others. And I think
Yeah.
this is great. It's great for my son and everybody, really, because we're all unique.
Yeah. And you had mentioned that when we briefly mentioned that movie Eternals that you had just mentioned. I think in addition to being diverse, like you said, I think I read somewhere that there was a superhero who's deaf that's in that movie. Like so there's a lot of inclusive.
I did not know that. I'm learning about that. See,
I think
it's amazing.
I think I read that somewhere, but yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So, because we all have different superpowers, if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
We should
all in the superhero movies that there's also disability and other diverse and inclusive representation in those as well.
Yes.
Let's move on and talk something else that I was the first that I heard, but and that is called social stories that you were telling me about when we were planning this podcast episode. And social stories is something that you do with your son, and is something that I don't know if we brought it up on a bridge call. I think
maybe I brought it up. I always like to talk about social stories.
But I think we should bring it up again on another bridge call. But for our listeners that are hearing this term, social stories, and probably wondering, what is this about? Is this about telling stories? Is this about social media, or is this totally something totally different? But when you which is something different, but when you tell me about it, I was really intrigued, because I think it could really help a lot of other people with challenges like your son and myself and the other service ambassadors
and look, I think many things that even though you do it for a person with autism, like I do for my son, it can apply to anybody else, right? So a social story is pretty much a story that prepares you for a scenario. So for Danny to go to the airport, we work with his therapist. The social story talks about what to expect in each step of the way. So when you get to the airport, and it's simple drawings showing also the emotions, simple drawings that show when you get to the airport, you're going to have to print your ticket. You're going to have to give your bag to the agent. Once you say goodbye to your bag, then you're going to go to a TSA line. There will be others waiting for their flights just like you. When you are on that line, you're going to put your stuff, your toy. So you talk step by step about the journey. Is a printed or can be electronic version of all the steps on what to expect of that situation. So the same way that it can be done for in flights, it can be done for a kid to go to the supermarket or to go to a friend's house, because transitions are so difficult. It creates a lot of anxiety. Social stories can be very helpful. And they don't need to be just for kids. They can be for grown-ups too, right? Someone that never flew before, maybe wondering, there's the anxiety, Do I have to talk to someone? What about the bags? What do I do? So social stories can help with that anxiety, and it's something that I would love United to have. I do it myself. The therapists do that. I think it's something that it can be beneficial for all. There's also social stories for people traveling by themselves, right? What to expect, and it helps for parents of kids that are not neurodiverse. They're neurotypical, just to prepare them for that trip. So this is what is a social story, Daniel, and I think it's something that can be done everywhere easily to print out and help
Awesome.
others. Yeah.
Awesome. So if people want to learn more about social stories, is there any resources online, or can
Yeah.
Google this, or
Well, if you do Google social stories autism, you'll find a whole bunch of examples of what it is. I believe Autism Speaks may have some resources too, but I pretty much Google it. I make it.
Yeah.
There are websites you can make your own. The collage is just preparing that person for a situation, and it can be anything. Visiting grandma, what to expect, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So hopefully, if any of you listening, think that this might help somebody that you might know that might have autism or other challenges, just Google social stories autism, and so let's move on. And you
Okay.
mentioned a little bit about the travel journey of what to expect and how this is
Yeah.
related to the social stories, but something else, and maybe you could talk a little bit about how can this benefit all United customers with challenges, because what we're doing at United is, like, especially with our inclusive employment, is we're showing inclusion in
Yeah.
action, and I'm sure like not only with our inclusive employment program with us as service ambassadors, but also I'm sure there's other parts as a company that will kind of lead in the way with showing inclusion in action. So
Absolutely.
maybe talk a little about some of those other ways with the travel experience.
Yes. But I think one of the things we are actually we're caring people. I
Mhm.
think being caring never goes the wrong way, and that allows us to see things that may not be seen. I think one of the big themes for me is invisible disabilities,
Mhm.
and the fact that if you're at the airport, sometimes you may not recognize that the person has autism or Alzheimer or Crohn's disease or whatever it is, right? So I think being caring is the way to go. I always like to remember that a travel never starts at the airport. Travel starts when you're planning for it already. And there's a whole bunch of people that don't even travel because they're afraid. So if it's someone with a disability that is traveling, first applause, because there's so many things that can happen along the way. That being caring is what will carry that good experience for all of them. But I do think some things that we can do as a company, of course, is just always make sure that we have the training for our airport agents for
Mhm.
in-flight, which they do for consistency.
Yeah.
And that helps people feel secure that when they're traveling with us, they get all the services that they need and they'll be seen for what they are. Right. So I think that's my maybe it's a little bit too generic here, Daniel.
No,
Um,
I think it's perfect. I think it gives our listeners a good idea of some of the ways of how United is leading with inclusion. You
yeah,
mentioned something about invisible disabilities, and with not all of us with intellectual disabilities, but some of us, like I'm sure, like your son and
yeah,
myself and others with invisible disabilities. That's something that I'm sure that there's something that can help to identify. But we'll talk about that in the next segment in our second to final segment
okay,
of
perfect.
of the episode today,
Yeah,
because there's some other believe they might be doing this in the UK, but
good.
um,
Okay.
um, we'll I think you had talked about it on one of our bridge calls, and
Yeah,
I've
Can
told,
I
yeah,
can I say something before
yeah,
we go? Because I know we're going to go there in the next
yeah,
segment. I think one thing is important to mention is how inclusion is important at United.
yeah,
We talk about the business resources groups that we have,
yeah,
and we are a massive company that has a lot of representation, right? You are here, I am here, many others are here to represent because the company cannot be the expert of everything,
yeah,
but the company has enough individuals that have personal experiences, that have other peers that share. So the fact that the company allows us to voice what we think is important and to make changes, because we did make effective changes on many different areas. Of course, there's a long way to go. Daniel, we can always get better.
yeah,
Uh, but the company's embracing that, has been embracing that. So I think the fact that we are heard and we take action is extremely important. One thing that I heard Scott Kirby say that really encourages me, you want to be the number airline in the world. He always talks about that, but he talks about we don't influence only the airline, we can influence behavior in the world, and we can. So I think if we start as the example, like we are for many areas, sustainability being one of them, for example, we can multiply that, because I want United to be a great employer, to be a great service for people with disabilities, but I want the world to be better,
yeah.
right? Not only that. So I think we are doing an outstanding job. Just the fact that we're here together having that dialogue, and open and honest dialogue, it's something that is great. So I really want to say that to Daniel. I apologize.
Awesome. No. I'm glad that you added that because it's important for listeners to hear that. So with that, we're going to take another short break, and then we'll talk about how to self-identify and invisible disabilities. Our guest is Sandra Kaspar from United Airlines, and we'll continue after the break on Special Chronicles. And hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break from our conversation today to hear a message from our partner. Support for Special Chronicles comes from ComEd. Special Chronicles is proud to partner with the ComEd Energy Force Ambassador Program. The Energy Force is the country's first energy efficiency education program designed for and taught by people with disabilities. ComEd is powering lives, and really is powering us here at Special Chronicles to keep the lights on and our technology is powered on. As ComEd powers the lives of us, they're literally giving a voice to people with special needs. We thank ComEd for the generous support of our mission at Special Chronicles. Learn more at specialchronicles.com/ComEd. That's specialchronicles.com/ComEd. And now we return to our conversation. This episode continues right. And we're back. Our guest is Sandra Kaspar from United Airlines. I'm Daniel, founder of Special Chronicles, service ambassador at United Airlines, and a Southern Striver International Global Messenger with Special Olympics. And there's probably a few other things I could add. But once again, Special Chronicles links to subscribe and listen to this podcast. You can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. You can find all those links on specialchronicles.com. You had mentioned a little bit in the last segment, Sandra, about invisible disabilities, and that's something else that I think and I think you had brought this up on one of our bridge calls on how to self-identify people with invisible disabilities. And one of the things that I think that you had brought up, and maybe you can talk a little bit to this now, is about lanyards to identify invisible disabilities. I think you talking about that. They're currently doing this at some airports in the UK.
That's right.
I know there's a podcast. It's a disability podcast that I listened to from the BBC called Ouch, or OUCH. And I think they had talked about, I don't know if it was, and this podcast this disability podcast is in the UK. I think that they talked about. I don't know if they talked about lanyards, but I think they talked about, and they might have, but I think they also talked about something about pins.
Okay. That
Having
identify.
yeah, either having pins to identify. I think they also talked about the same idea that you had talked about with having lanyards
Okay.
to
As here to identify.
identify at the airport. And I don't know if this is coming to any U.S. airports, or
Yes,
maybe this is something that,
actually.
as a part of Bridge, we can help to encourage
Yes.
United to
Yes.
do. What, talk a little bit
I
about this.
will. I will. No, thanks for the opportunity too. So, um, first, Daniel, I think there's a lot of initiatives going on with Bridge, and we're just making sure that we prioritize them, right? Jill does a great job. Jill is the president of Bridge BRG, Jill Mills, that we are all going the same path, and then we work as a team. Um, I want to talk about this initiative because I think it's very relevant and it will englobe several invisible disabilities. It's pretty much a lanyard. It's a lanyard that has some flowers on it, and it started in the UK. So you can self-identify. Not everybody likes to self-identify because they may feel that they are a target, or they may not be ready to share that they have a disability. But if you want, you can self-identify or identify your kid. And when they wear this lanyard, which is very bright, because imagine it's green with sunflowers, the airport folks know the person may need assistance. So they may need assistance. It could be someone that has epilepsy, Alzheimer, autism, whatever that cannot be seen. It's not like they get special perks, but there's more understanding of the challenges because someone with the autism spectrum, for example, may have some sensory sensibilities to noise, to loud, to noise or to bright lights. So when I found out about the initiative, I reached out to some of our peers in the UK to see how does it work, because you see commercials you don't even know if, and it's outstanding. So it pretty much is an initiative from the airports. They're the ones who purchase those lanyards. It does require training though from all of us, right? To know what does it mean. It is a great help for the individual because they don't have to go through every checkpoint and explain. Imagine you're going on vacation. You want to enjoy your vacation. And then you get to the airport and say, well, you know what? I have autism. If something happens, I just want you to be aware. Then you go through the TSA line. Hey, I'm sorry. I have autism. If something happens, if like, it is part of your trip. You want to enjoy it, right? So if you have the lanyard, people that are trained and look, they know you need help, you automatically help.
Yeah.
So it makes the experience more pleasant to others. I know there are other initiatives too that are taking place, but this is one that I think is already ready and we could embrace. But we're working a lot with other partners too. So just want to plug that idea out there.
Also, and I'm sure we'll talk about it more on other bridge calls, but
Of course.
I'm sure that this will hopefully we can bring this to more of our airports in the U.S. with more more of our United hubs.
And Daniel, I did not mention that I was so focused on explaining the initiative. It is coming to the US. They're going to have it in Denver and in Houston already. Because it's small, it needs to have critical mass to be embraced, right? I think one of the important things is that there is consistency too, because we have a huge team to know. So if there's consistency, we can make it happen. But it's a beautiful, like there are many beautiful initiatives out there.
Awesome.
Can I make a plug for you here?
Yeah.
Because this podcast is so important, and like many other business, right? We need support, and so I do want to just call out. I don't know if anybody missed the commercial here, but go to specialchronicles.com/give to donate. I'm gonna put something on my LinkedIn account too. So for my network, I would love them to do that. Perfect. Daniel has it there. It is so important, right? We don't survive out of just air and water.
Yeah. Even though it's free for people to listen or to watch this podcast, every month, like in order for us to either live stream or for us to even upload the audio for like for the media hosting for us to upload these audio files for the podcast, for the website, for to keep this technology plugged in, to keep the lights on, to keep all this stuff running behind the scenes.
Yes.
It's because of supporters. Like I know I pre-recorded a couple episodes a couple weeks ago, and we when I was done recording, my dad's the business manager and at Special Chronicles, and so I found out that as I was recording, we got like there was I think two new supporters, two new listeners had donated, and so so hopefully all of you can, if you're listening to this and you have enjoyed hearing Sandra talk about whole story with her son, and you want us to be able to share more of these stories, then specialchronicles.com/give. There's a link in the show notes right below wherever you're listening to this.
Right.
Just click on this link, specialchronicles.com/give, to donate, and it goes a long way so we can continue to give a voice to people like your son and myself and the other service ambassadors, and for all of us. And
opportunity to the Daniels.
So we're gonna go ahead and take another short break. When we come back, we'll get into some final thoughts and a question I always conclude these conversations with. You looking at the show notes before we started recording, Sandra, you probably got a peek of what that final question is. Try to surprise it for most of our listeners. But I mean, for our guests, I mean, for the past couple of years, our listeners probably know what that final question is, but we'll get to that after this final break. Because if you just listen to the audio podcast, go check out the video on YouTube or Facebook or Twitter Live. If you watch, so you can watch this, and if you're wondering how we're able to produce the video, the live streamed video version of this podcast, if you're wondering how we're recording this, it's with a service called StreamYard. And this final break will tell you a little bit more about how you can sign up for StreamYard yourself with our referral link. Hey, friends, podcast listener friends. I'd like to take a brief moment to let you know about how awesome StreamYard is. StreamYard is the easiest way to create professional live streams. StreamYard is a live streaming studio in your browser. Interview guests, share your screen, and much more. Stream directly to Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and other platforms. Sign up for StreamYard and get $10 in credit with our referral link at specialchronicles.com/StreamYard. That's specialchronicles.com/StreamYard. You see the link right below on the screen here, and also will be in the show notes in the description below. But all of us at Special Chronicles, we love StreamYard. I've got a coffee mug I'm drinking coffee out of. Got a t-shirt on. I've got a sweatshirt. This StreamYard Puddles plush duck. Puddles the duck here in the studio, and just really love it. Makes really love StreamYard. It makes it easy to connect with guests. Just send us the link to join StreamYard, and easily have a professional logo and banners and graphics, and it just makes it easy to pre-record, to live stream on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Really love StreamYard. It's helped to make the audio podcasts and the video versions of the audio podcasts that I've been doing for the past 13 years. Has helped to make the video versions up to the next level, to a more professional level, while also making it easy to live stream. So all of us at Special Chronicles love StreamYard. Once again, if you want to sign up with StreamYard, specialchronicles.com/StreamYard. That's specialchronicles.com/StreamYard. StreamYard to sign up and get 10,000 credit with our referral link. I hope you all will sign up for StreamYard, and happy live streaming. And until then, sign up for StreamYard and get 10,000 credit with our referral link at specialchronicles.com/StreamYard. That's specialchronicles.com/StreamYard. And now back to the show. Our guest is Sandra from United Airlines, and I'm Daniel, founder of Special Chronicles, service ambassador at United Airlines and a Southern Tribal International Global Messenger of Special Olympics. And I know I did if you're watching the video version of this podcast, probably noticed I did a quick costume change during the last break.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that I
was more of a summer look, and now it's kind of winter. So
and now it's winter, yeah, with my sweater, yes. Anyways, any plugs for you on how people can follow you on social media? I think you had mentioned that you're pretty active on LinkedIn, but share how people can follow you there, or on Twitter, or any other places as well. And then I guess we probably since both employed by United, we probably also should mention how people can book the travel.
Yeah, I actually want to make a point about that. So there are two things, like LinkedIn. Please follow me, Sandra Kaspar, Kaspar, or be my friend there. I post a lot of things about inclusion. That's my passion too. So you won't see a lot of commercial stuff. You see more stuff related to inclusion. We have the United.com here, but I do work in sales with travel agency partners too. So book United through your travel agency partner. And you can always go to United.com as well. As long as you book United, that's what we want you to do. Right?
I want to make sure. Awesome. So I'll make sure to include links to your LinkedIn and to United.com in the show notes for people. Yeah. But yeah, no matter how you travel, we want to make sure that if you're listening to us, that you travel on United for when you travel. Because I'm sure when you're listening to this, if you want to take that winter, because it's winter. Yeah. Well, by the time people hear this in January 2022, take that winter vacation, or you can book your travel. It's been joy. We've got a few minutes left of this episode, but it's been a joy having you on, share about your son, your story with your son, and about inclusive employment and inclusion and inclusively inclusion. And so any final thoughts on your overall time here today on the Special Chronicles show that you want to share with our listeners?
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for the opportunity. For me, it's a pleasure to be here. And I mean, having that chat. I think the message that I want to give everybody is like, just be kind. Everybody is different and unique. And don't feel afraid to learn more about things. And even if you say something wrong, I think that's the path to go to. We're doing everything that we can in United to be the airline of choice for people with disabilities too, because traveling the world is a pleasure and it's a right that everybody should have. So
awesome. And to be and speaking of being inclusively inclusive, I don't know if that's
it's a new thing.
If that's even a phrase that we say, inclusively inclusive, or
inclusively inclusive. Yeah, I don't know.
I might have just made that up on the spot. But to introduce the final question, we've got a bumble.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising.
Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference. Our demands are
equality,
dignity,
and the recognition of our
shared humanity. We will not stop or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
more divided than ever.
And coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution
is inclusion?
Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
And if you couldn't tell from that, Bumpo, final inclusion, as you know, is a big part of Special Olympics, but it's also a big part of United, and we talk a lot about the inclusion revolution and being, as I said a few times on this episode, we want to make sure that we'll always with United with being inclusively inclusive. So I always conclude these conversations, these podcast episodes with asking all the guests. I'll do the same with you, and that is, what does inclusion mean to you?
Yeah. And I was thinking, this episode is 463. What answer can I give that we haven't heard before? And I heard several of the podcasts, so and I agree that it's love and all that. One thing for me, so I think inclusion is feeling embraced for who you are. But I always associate inclusion with belonging. I think when everybody has the sense of belonging, not fit in, you have to make it happen for yourself. When you belong and you can be yourself, I think that means that inclusion has succeeded when you're belonging. And so I think that's what it is. Inclusion for me is belonging. Inclusion comes from the other side, and belonging is the feeling that it gives to people. So
awesome. Well, we have a lot of really powerful answers and a lot of unique answers. I don't think we've ever really had the same answer to that question, but it's neat that we get a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah.
And people can kind of hear from each of our guests what inclusion means to them, and hopefully can apply it to their own lives.
You should do a special with all the answers. I was just thinking about that.
I should.
It's amazing. You're right.
I should. And I've only been asking that question on the episodes for the past 2 years, since probably since 2019. So the past 2 years. But I should probably take some time to.
Yeah. On your free time where there's none.
to edit those answers, but that would be neat to do a special episode where we edit all those answers. Yeah. So if anybody wants to help us edit, is good at editing audio and wants to help us, you can get in touch. Specialchronicles.com for links to you can underneath the about, you guys can, there's a link to contact. You can find my email or how to get in touch with us. And also on specialchronicles.com, you can find links to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Find links to subscribe to this podcast, all other series, the other podcasts on this Special Chronicles network. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter and find links to subscribe to this podcast, or wherever you get your podcast. We'll be back next week with some more exciting episodes this year. As November 2022, we'll be celebrating the 500th episode of this podcast, and then in 2023, the 15th anniversary of Special Chronicles will be in 2023. So stay tuned to some type of special live podcast or some type of live event that we will still in the very early stages of planning. But subscribe to our newsletter, and we'll let you know what that live event will. Hopefully, it'll be safe to have live events, and we're excited to bring back a live celebration event. So stay tuned to that. And until then, thank you, Sandra, for coming on the Special Chronicles show.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
And until then, we'll see you all next week. Choose to include. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles Shows podcast. Visit specialchronicles.com to follow Special Chronicles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified of new episodes. Also, subscribe to our newsletter.